Salams and welcome. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Quran in English, Basics for Beginners. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Right, continuing in the series of the Anbiya, the previous episode we saw the story of Yunus alayhi salam and the importance of the very powerful dua, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin, that any time when you're in difficulty or distress, then you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your needs and you make the dua, and by the grace of Allah, then that needs of yours are fulfilled and obstacles are removed from your way, right? And now we come into the story of Zakaria. And remember that Zakaria alayhi salam and his wife were barren. His wife never became pregnant. And now he's reached his old age. He's now a very old man. Yet he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he wanted an heir, a descendant, to carry on the work that he was doing, the work of holding up the banner of truth and belief, right, in Tawheed, La ilaha illallah. And in that, his wife became pregnant, which again is a great miracle, because an old woman who has been barren, infertile her whole life, from a medical and a scientific point of view, it is then impossible for her to get pregnant, right? Without like this modern techniques of IVF and all of that we have. In the old days, it was impossible for such a person to get pregnant. Maybe her fallopian tubes were blocked and so on. But now in her old age, even her ovaries have dried up. She no longer has her monthly menstrual cycles. Her ovaries no longer produce the monthly eggs. So now for a woman who does not have any more eggs left in her ovaries, and now she is old, it is now impossible for her to fall pregnant. But by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah can do anything through kun fayakun, right? Kun, be, and it is, it becomes. So, just as the miraculous case in Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam was 100 years old and his wife Sarah was 90 years old. And remember that meanwhile, the firstborn child of Ibrahim alayhi salam was through his wife Hajar, and that is Ismail alayhi salam. But because envy arose between Hajar and Sarah, then Ibrahim alayhi salam had to take Hajar and Ismail to Mecca. At that time, the Kaaba was not yet built, right? So now he was, and Sarah, his first wife, was looking with longing at the way in which Ibrahim alayhi salam was playing so lovingly with Ismail, his young baby. So he was spending a lot of time with Hajar, and you could not blame the man. And she also had the desire that, she would also like to give a child to her husband. Because look how happy Ibrahim alayhi salam was to be playing with Ismail alayhi salam, as any father would be. And how happy Hajra was with playing with a child as a family. So she also desired that, as is the one with any woman, right? So meanwhile, when Hajar and Ismail were then out of sight, out of mind, were taken to the rural area in Makkah. At that stage, the Kaaba was not built. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled her innermost desires. And then we know the three angels came. They were actually the angels of punishment, and they were actually on the way to the town of Lut alayhi salam and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah to send them the punishment. But en route, they stopped by to Ibrahim alayhi salam and his wife Sarah to give them the amazing news that Sarah is also going to have a child, and not only a child, but also a grandchild. That means they are giving news that they're going to be grandparents. Absolutely amazing. So they got news of Ishaq alayhi salam and Yaqub alayhi salam, right? So they were absolutely thrilled, as anyone would be, right? So they were actually given double news that they would be old enough to have children, and even older enough to even be grandparents. They would see the grandchildren, right? Now, once again, because this is a very old couple, 100-year-old man, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and a 90-year-old woman, Sarah, it is a medical and a scientific impossibility for Sarah to become pregnant. In the same way, it is a medical and scientific impossibility for the wife of Zakaria to become pregnant. Right, in an old age, a man can still produce sperms. Right, a man does not go through menstrual cycles or go through a stage of menopause where the testes stop producing or the gonads stop producing the sperms. So a 100-year-old man can still produce sperms, but not the woman. The woman's eggs have dried up. And there's also a danger that if theoretically such old women do become pregnant, then there's a double danger that in older women who are older than the age of 45, there is a greater risk of abnormalities and mutations. And that's why medical doctors always advise people to a woman to fall pregnant while they are young. And especially to be on the safe side, avoid falling pregnant after the age of 40. Right, but up to 45, you can still be in the safe zone as long as you go for your regular tests. But in women who are now 80 and 90 years old, firstly, there's a high risk of mutations. And secondly, even if that woman becomes pregnant, as the pregnancy advances, by the time you're 6 months old, that uterus is now stretching. And there's a great risk of tear of the uterus. That womb can burst and the uterine arteries get burst and rupture, and the person can die from internal bleeding. So it's not an easy thing. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills anything, it then becomes a safe pregnancy. There's no bursting of the uterus, there's no abnormal children, everything is healthy. Because this is the creative ability of the Supreme Creator of the heavens and the earth. So we as ordinary human beings will be concerned, but when Allah says kun fayakun, then there's no worry. Then that woman, a infertile, barren woman, gets pregnant. There's no mutations. There's no abnormal children, because Ishaq alayhi salam, outstandingly healthy, and then the child of Zachariah, John the Baptist, Yahya alayhi salam, outstandingly healthy, no disabilities or anything like that, right? So absolutely amazing. So remember, let's continue with this. And remember Zachariah when he cried to his Lord, "Oh my Lord, leave me not without offspring, though you are the best of inheritors." So we listened to him, and we granted him Yahya, also known as John the Baptist. We cured his wife's barrenness for him. These three were ever quick in emulation in good works. They used to call on us with love and reverence and humble themselves before us. May your life be filled with barakah, blessings, abundance, goodness, and afiyah. Look after yourself. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.